Hello, my name is Ashley Metter. I am a CODA here in Tyler, Texas, and I work at one of the acute care hospitals. And I'm also an occupational therapy student at the University of Texas at Tyler.
My name is Amber Weaver. I am also a CODA in the DFW area. I currently do pediatric home health, and I am also an occupational therapy student at UT Tyler.
So welcome. Today we wanted to talk to you about our service learning project that we did for about a year at our school, first year of our school, and it involves a sensory pathway project that we created for a local private school. So a little bit about our program. We are a Master's of Occupational Therapy program at the University of Texas at Tyler. And so we are actually a bridge program that allows CODAs to bridge from a CODA to becoming an OTR. There are currently 4 cohorts that have gone through the program. We are the 3rd currently, and we are actually the only bridge program that's in the state. There have been some before us, but currently we are the only one. So we participated in a service learning experience that began our first semester of school and went into our second semester, and it involved us collaborating with a local private school to create a sensory pathway for their early learners program, which involved kids around the ages of 4 and 5. So All Saints Episcopal School is a private Christian school that is highly devoted to offering a college preparatory curriculum, especially looking at STEAM curriculum, which involves science, technology, engineering, art, and math. And they really try to drive the students to be innovators. And so their actual identity statement is that All Saints Episcopal School empowers students to reach their full potential academically, artistically, athletically, and spiritually through creativity, collaboration, and innovative learning in an inclusive, nurturing Christian environment. Our group who did this service learning project for them had the privilege to work alongside them and go to the school after school hours and see their facility. And it really is an amazing place. And you can tell that the staff is very involved in their students' learning, and they try to make it as hands-on as possible. And it's just a really neat and unique environment for these kids to be learning in.
Okay, so next we're going to kind of talk about why we wanted to create a sensory pathway. Sensory walks in general are a great resource for schools to help improve kiddos' self-regulation, to better facilitate their learning and their play in a classroom environment. There's been a lot of research that has found that students are better able to sit still and focus longer if their bodies are receiving the correct sensory input that they're requiring through a variety of different sensory stimuli. This walk specifically was created to go from more calming to alerting, and then alerting to calming based on the direction. The way that the hallway was set up is the hallway leads outside to the recess area. So it starts more calming, and as you progress through the pathway, it gets more alerting as the kiddos go outside to recess. And then when they're finished with recess, they come back through the hallway, go through the more alerting side and progress to the more calming side, just so they can get that more calming input to help calm themselves from when they've been outside for recess, so they're able to better attend and pay attention in their classrooms. So here's some pictures from when we were installing the sensory pathway. One of the things that we ordered were decals for the floors and the walls. So there's some pictures of us installing some handprints and footprints, which we utilized for wall push-ups, and also a decal of a flower, which was hopscotch, and then the daisy was also one of our ways that we provided vestibular input to our kiddos. Um, so speaking of vestibular input, vestibular input is just the body's sensation of position in space, and it helps process through movement. It contributes to balance, eye movement, alertness, muscle tone, and increases the ability to sit in your chair correctly. Some of the activities that we incorporated that were vestibular in our sensory pathway included the flower decal that I had mentioned from the last slide. The kiddos are able to walk in a circle around the flower petals a few times, and then also components like stepping stones and balance logs and things like that. The next component that we included is proprioception, which is just the sense that enables us to know where the different parts of our body are in space, how they're moving, and how much force and strength that our muscles need for everyday functional tasks. Some of the proprioceptive activities that we included in the sensory pathway include wall push-ups, which you can see in the picture on the right, and then also stomp pads, which are included in the picture on the left. They're just cool little gel tiles that we put on the ground and on a spinning board on the wall so that the kiddos could get that input through their feet and through their hands. And then also the hopscotch, which is included in the middle picture. And then you can also see our vestibular component with the flower. The next aspect that we included was tactile, which is just the sense that provides information about light touch, vibration, pressure, temperature, and even pain. Some of the components that we included for tactile were the stomp gel pads that we placed on the floor and on the wall for tactile input of the hands. And also we installed some sequins boards so that the kiddos could use their hands to flip the sequins to change the colors on the walls.
So one of the next components is visual motor, which we know is our ability to interpret visual information and respond with motor action. So components that we involved in our sensory pathway for that were like BMI and puzzles on the wall, which we'll show you in just a second, and a activity that involves transferring apples from one tree to another. Really what we're trying to help too, if you think about, for any of you who know like the Berry VMI, you think about kiddos who have sensory processing issues and kids that might not pass their VMI assessment. What does that mean for their handwriting? So really we're trying to start on this early. So when we're talking about back to tactile, you see that they created the little boards. So what is great about working alongside All Saints, a little side note, is that they have older students in their engineering classes that work with wood cutting, wood burning, and a lot of other technological classes. And so they created a lot of the components for us, and we kind of gave them the parameters and told them what we think would be best and what would be helpful, and they ran with it. And they are just brilliant, brilliant minds and kids. And so they created these little frames, which Amber was talking about, that you see a lot of kiddos with the pillows or with the cool sweatshirts that have the sequence where you swipe it up one way and it's one color, and you swipe it down the other way and it's a different color. So that was a good tactile component for the kids to use. In the middle is the VMI projects that the students made, and you can tell there's a flower, a butterfly, and a turtle, and really they just used a wood cutting machine and burning, and they took little doorknobs, and you can easily move the doorknob along the track. And so we thought this was just a fun little activity for kiddos to work on. Another component that we wanted to really be sure to include was mindfulness. So Amber talked about how there are different components that are either alerting or calming, and we want to use it in a specific progression that is beneficial to the kiddo using it. So let's say, for instance, the kids have been playing at recess for about 30 minutes and they're ready to come back in for classroom time. So we have them running in and they go through an alerting pattern and they slowly go into a calming pattern. And at the very end, we wanted to include a mindfulness component that helped them to take a second, maybe do a yoga pose in front of a mirror, take a few deep breaths. There are bee breathing exercises that we provided for All Saints to utilize so the teachers could walk the kids through it. And it also teaches, it helps them pay attention. It also promotes overall health and well-being. We want to start promoting good mental health in our kiddos now, and definitely teaching them how to calm and self-regulate in that sense when they are getting worked up. And then overall, we look at motor planning, which is movement that helps our students learn how to process new and unfamiliar tasks so they can better enhance their gross and fine motor skills. So when we look at that, we look at the whole shebang of what we're doing, right? We're looking at balancing, they're hopping, they're spinning, they're learning about their bodies, and it's going to help them better participate in play, like in PE and at recess, and better understand how to hold a pencil, like we talked about with VMI, so on and so forth. And so here's what we were talking about with the apple tree. So we had them create a tree, again, out of a wood cutting project, and they cut out little pieces of pool noodles, and there's little Velcros attached to them. So it's also auditory too, if anybody is into the ASMR that we've heard about lately, where you just kind of fixate on certain auditory noises. If kids like to hear that, they can have that. They have the tactile input. They also have vestibular, motor planning, and VMI. And then you can kind of just see here in the middle is just kind of a progression of from the calming to alerting. And as you can see, the alerting is down by the doors outside where they take recess. And then to your right, you can see that they also created a mirror, like I mentioned, where they can stand, do a yoga pose, look at themselves, take a few deep breaths, watch their chest rise and fall, and try to calm themselves to get ready for classroom learning.
Okay, so next we're just going to kind of discuss kind of the process that we went through while creating the sensory pathway and different aspects that we had to consider when designing it. We created a lot of rough drafts that we sent back and forth between All Saints as we were coming up with different components that we wanted in the pathway. And then after we had sent some rough drafts back and forth and we had a good idea of what we wanted, we ended up kind of doing our own research online to find the components that we wanted and determine the price of the components, how much they would cost, and we put that in a spreadsheet that we presented to All Saints just so they could kind of determine what they did or didn't want to include based on their price point. And like Ashley was saying earlier, they have the means in order to design and create a lot of the components that we wanted to include. So this spreadsheet was also used to kind of help them determine what they felt like they could make versus what they felt like they wanted to purchase. So after we kind of had that nailed down, we had to take measurements of the hallway just to make sure that everything fit and to make sure our vision was going to work the way that we wanted to. All Saints is very cool in the fact that they recently renovated their hallway for their early learners, and they have a bunch of like 3D trees and houses coming out from the walls. So making sure that our sensory pathway would best incorporate into their natural environment was very important. Another thing that we had to consider was cleaning requirements, especially during COVID-19, because we had to make sure that everything was easily able to wipe down. Nothing was porous that could hold any type of bacteria or viruses. And so taking that into consideration was extremely important. We also had to consider fire codes, making sure that nothing was sticking too far out from the walls, preventing easy access to the hallway and to the exit, and just making sure that that was still safe for the kiddos and parents and faculty. And so after we took all of those things into consideration, we were able to order what we needed. All Saints was able to design what they wanted to design and build, and we were able to go to All Saints and install the sensory pathway. This is just an example of one of our rough drafts that we had sent towards or to All Saints. This was definitely towards the end of our design process, and it kind of shows the flow of the sensory pathway, the measurements required, and just making sure that everything fit appropriately in the hallway.
So our overall vision for All Saints was that through a sensory integration approach, we hope to improve school-based occupations and positive classroom behaviors for All Saints early learning students through the utilization of the sensory pathway. So in other words, we really wanted to create something that would help the students take a minute, whether it was just going through the day-to-day, okay, let's alert them to go outside, or let's calm them to come back in from recess, or let's maybe pull out a kiddo that's having some behavioral problems that needs to go through an alerting to calming progression of the sensory pathway to get him or her ready for classroom activities, or vice versa. If they're feeling tired, let's alert them to get them ready for classroom activities. And then here are our references. We greatly appreciate your time.